Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the GSMC Television Podcast. I am your host, Trey Plutnicki, as always. And today we are going to be talking about some documentaries that I've been watching this week, which they've been all fantastic as usual. Love a good documentary. Never hurts to learn some stuff in an easily injectable format. So I'll be talking about some of my documentaries that I've been watching. I also finished up The Politician, which we talked about last episode, so if you stick around to the end of the pod, I'll be talking about that. And I'll be sharing some of my thoughts with Ryan Murphy and his shortcomings and his flaws and the flaws in his writing, because I feel like I've had this boiling up inside of me for a very long time, and I think it's time to unleash. But regardless, let's get into today's topic. So first off, first documentary I listened to today, first documentary I watched this week on a broader scale, was We Are Freestyle Love Supreme. Now, many of you know that I come from a theater background, and not only that, but I come from a improv background. So We Are Freestyle Love Supreme kind of celebrates that in a way. Similar to the film Don't Think Twice, We Are Freestyle Love Supreme isn't necessarily about the art of improv and how to do improv, but it's more of a what it means to people sort of thing, and what it means to the people that do it. Because frequently, people that do improv say it's way more for them than it is for the people that watch. Obviously, improv typically is not the most viewed form of theater, which may come as a surprise to you. And if it does, congratulations on the new rock you just put a down payment on. We Are Freestyle Love Supreme is a documentary about a freestyle rap improv group. It was founded by Tommy Kail and this other guy that I'm going to Google the name of because I cannot for the life of me remember his name. His group name is Two Touch. Anthony Venezale. I feel like I'm pronouncing that right, but Anthony Venezale. He and Tommy Kail founded Freestyle Love Supreme. Tommy Kail, also you may know him. He is the director of. He directed Tony Award-winning shows such as In the Heights and Hamilton, both written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. They met when Lin was in college or high school. I can't remember. He explains it in the documentary. The two met when Lin had one of his first showings for In the Heights, and then Tommy just assumed the role as director from then on out. Freestyle Love Supreme sort of, like I said, explores and celebrates this improv, and celebrates improv as sort of a incubator. And I am appreciative for what it does because I love improv so much, and I don't think people understand its impact in theater and understand its impact in film. A lot of the comedians that you see, like coming from SNL or on late night talk shows or in, like hosts of late night talk shows, writers of late night talk shows, most of them got their start at improv theaters, and whether it be improv theaters or stand-up, those sorts of arts are cultivated on stage when you are your most vulnerable. And I think We Are Freestyle Love Supreme does a very good job of explaining how terrifying that is and how utterly confusing it is to go up and put on a show that none of you have prepared at all for. So it talks about its upbringing, how it started in the basement of the drama bookshop and cultivated a small audience there. It then goes on to talk about how it went to the Edinburgh, it's like the Edinburgh Festival Fringe or something like that overseas, and went to Europe and they did Freestyle Love Supreme. And there's a cute little scene where they get their first bad review, which is it's not really a scathing review because it's written by someone who just doesn't understand. Not only is it hard to, as like someone who, not only is it difficult to understand as someone who is of a different generation other than this generation, like let's say I'd say like 35 on, what like hip hop is, but it's also as equally difficult to understand what freestyling is. It's so out of touch from what is considered a mainstream entertainment audience, and that is what produced that bad review in Europe of all places to hold to have a freestyle hip hop show. It's super interesting, super interesting. Later on, more people were added other than just Lin-Manuel, Chris Jackson, Tommy Kail, Anthony Two Touch. Shockwave is the beatboxer that like lays down the beat essentially, and that role specifically. A side note on Shockwave, it's brought up that is a relatively he's an unsung hero of the group because he's not necessarily the one that shines. By definition, he produces the backing track. He is background noise. But there is a deliberate effort in the documentary to make sure that Shockwave knows and that everybody knows that Shockwave is literally the foundation of what they're doing. And the show probably doesn't exist as it is without him. And I think that is a kind of a beautiful metaphor for design. Like design in theater, design in television, design in film. I think Shockwave inhabits the unseen element of design. And I'll be talking about design later in another doc, so after I finish this, stick around, please. We Are Freestyle Love Supreme continues on its story and eventually leads to a point where it's kind of not really about the group anymore. It's more so about the group's stories and how the group has shaped them. For example, UTK goes on to explain how he was going to be in Hamilton. In fact, Lin-Manuel talked about how he wrote the role of Aaron Burr for UTK. He felt he was lyrically apt, and UTK, by the way, is like light years beyond some of these guys in terms of lyricism for his like freestyling. It's sick. But so Lin-Manuel goes on to describe like, yeah, UTK's sick. We know he had vocal chops. We know he had the rapping ability and all of that. And we were going to I was writing Aaron Burr with him in mind. And then UTK described that just life got in the way. You know, he struggled with alcoholism. He was young. He was stupid and decided his addiction took over his life, and he needed to address that immediately. He wasn't ready to have the responsibility. Like Lin-Manuel describes Hamilton he never knew. Nobody knew the success that Hamilton was going to have. I frequently describe Hamilton as an abstract piece, a explicitly fringe, theater piece that creeped its way into the mainstream. And that's how a lot of revolutionary art comes to be. UTK didn't know that. Lin-Manuel didn't know that. Chris Jackson didn't know that. And Lin-Manuel's exclusion of UTK taught him a lot about himself. And I think he does explore that through Freestyle Love Supreme. And he wouldn't have gotten that life lesson, I don't think, if it wasn't for Freestyle Love Supreme. Tommy Kail talks about his falling out with Anthony. You know what? I don't know how to like pronounce his name. I wish I did. His name is Two Touch. Venizale. Anthony Venizale. I think that's how you pronounce it. Those two, Tommy Kail and Anthony Venizale, had their own falling out. When Tommy Kail was directing Hamilton, and he was the day before they were going to freeze the show, meaning make no more changes to the show at the public, Tommy Kail invited his friend that had moved away to San Francisco, kind of separated himself because he was starting a whole new life. He couldn't keep doing improv. That wasn't paying the bills. He's started a life, and he invited his buddy to see the show. And Tommy Kail described his interaction with him after the show in an email as just a list of to-dos, a list of changes, a list of suggestions. And Tommy Kail explained that wasn't our relationship anymore. That was our relationship when he was like the older brother, when he was a partner. But Tommy Kail wanted to make it clear that he was viewing the show as a friend. And their relationship changed because of that. So when Freestyle Love Supreme came back together in 2019 and 2020 to be off Broadway and on Broadway respectively, I imagine that there were some tensions, but at the end of the day, they're both doing something that in general shaped who they are and they believe is worthwhile for the greater good. I think it's super interesting, like Chris Jackson and James Monroe Iglehart, which are these Broadway kind of legends at this point, even though Chris Jackson has really only been in Lin-Manuel stuff, and James Monroe Iglehart has won a Tony for Aladdin. And I think Chris Jackson won a Tony. Not entirely sure. I can't remember. I wish I. Let me see. Did Chris Jackson win a Tony? Show me the money. Did he win a Tony? Chris Jackson, tell me if you won a Tony. Yeah, wait, no, he won a daytime Emmy. I guess he technically won a Tony. He won a drama desk, yeah. He did not win a Tony though. He won a Tony technically for Best Musical Theater Album, which he is a part of. Full force, full stop. He is a part of that musical theater album. But he didn't himself win a Tony. He was nominated, didn't win. But he's this guy who was insecure about his ability to freestyle. He pictured himself more as like a singer. But honestly, he just lets it rip and you could listen to him sing anything. But on top of that, he does have the chops. And James Monroe Iglehart also has the chops. He has not only the comedy chops to be able to do a comedy improv hip-hop show, but he has the vocal chops. He is a Tony Award winner for Aladdin as the genie. And all these people so absurdly talented, like each one of them. It's kind of wild that they're doing something as silly as I wouldn't want to say silly, but I mean at a base level, all improv shows are very silly. Yeah, and just the list of people that you would probably recognize from who was in the group, and I'll just read them off because I'm looking at them. Some of the notable names: Lin-Manuel Miranda, obviously, is a recognizable name. Chris Jackson, who is mostly known because of his relationship to Lin-Manuel Miranda. Andrew Bancroft. You know what? Andrew Bancroft being in this brought back some fantastic memories. He wasn't really a central part of the doc because I believe he joined the group a little late, but his story in the that I know is awesome. I mean, so he was in Freestyle Love Supreme, which is sick, by the way, and he's great also. But he also hosted this thing called the Dig Reel, which I watched when I was little, and it was essentially like a recap of some of the top posts on this site called Dig, which was like Reddit before Reddit. And I remember watching every episode of the Dig Reel. I enjoyed the content. I thought Andrew Bancroft was very funny, and it was just such like a home bringing to know that where I lie in my career and where I want to go, and know that I am where young Trey was like aspiring to be. Essentially, it's just really cool. And my specific journey with improv and stuff is I didn't really truly get started in improv until my senior year of high school. But I mean, like my mom says, the symptoms were there. And I think Andrew Bancroft being in this and me loving this is a clear indication that this is like what I was meant to do, which I think is really cool. Wayne Brady, Daveed Diggs, both in Hamilton. Daveed Diggs, Tony Award winner. Wayne Brady, Broadway legend and also improv legend from Whose Line Is It Anyway? It's just really amazing that this group not only happened, but there is a market for it. Honestly, I know improv isn't for everybody, and I know hip-hop isn't for everybody, obviously, or else there would be like a way bigger market for it. But I do think these words specifically are important, and it's something that I heard in school, because I did a lot of improv at college. This tech teacher, his name is Patrick Stone. I just completely doxed him. Find him, okay? His name is Patrick Stone. People call him Stone. He told me one day that he would never go to an improv show. And he's good friends with me. He's like, I'm never going to one of your improv shows. And I go, Patrick, why? Please tell me why. And he goes, I liken theater to sports, right? I want to see a professional football game, right? I would go out to see a professional football game, but I would never watch them work out or train or do push-ups in the field, in sync. You doing improv is me watching you do push-ups in the field, and I'm never going to see that. It's for some people, but it's definitely not for others. Obviously, when there's a performance quality to some of this stuff, where there's entertainment to be had, it's a bit different, but I think the analogy is apt. And I think watching someone's process is as interesting as watching the final product. And I think to people today, I think that is why that has such a draw, is because it feels like we're watching Chris Jackson's process. It feels like we're watching UTK's process. It feels like we're watching Lin-Manuel's process. And in a way, we are. So that's the first doc of Hot Doc Tuesday. Stick around. We have 2 more documentaries that we want to cover. And if you stick to the end of the show, I will be giving my final thoughts on The Politician and my final thoughts on Ryan Murphy's monolith of television. So stick around and we'll be right back.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the GSMC Television Podcast. I'm your host, Trey Plutnicki, and we are continuing Hot Doc Tuesday today with another special documentary. This documentary is called Abstract, The Art of Design. It's a design documentary, which is really something fantastic. I mean, going back to what I was saying before about being able to watch someone's process, I only got a chance to watch 2 episodes. I got a chance to watch the first episode, and I believe if you watch anything at all, even if it's anthological, you should definitely watch the first of whatever it is. So if it's like anthology episodes, watch the first one so you get the idea, because there's a reason why they put that one first. If it's like seasons, watch the first season. I'll talk about this obviously in the last segment because Ryan Murphy's famous for his anthology series, but watch the first season of anything. So I watched the first one, which was about illustration, which was fantastic, and then I watched the one about set design. And it follows someone named Ez and someone named, I wish I knew. I really need to write these things down before I start gabbing. Christoph, that's his name. Christoph. Someone named Ez and someone named Christoph. Christoph is the illustrator and Ez is the set designer. And like I was saying before about how amazing it is to watch someone's process, I think it's really inspiring to see how different people think. I read a lot of like self-improvement books and like kind of frame of mind books in a way, because there really is an art involved in wanting to be your best self. And not only your best self like as a person, but also your best self in your career path. I think it's human nature to be wanting to pave the way and to be wanting to be an inspiration in your field. And I think this documentary in particular does a very, very good job at laying out how these people think. Specifically in the first. Let's talk about the first episode. So that's the episode with Christoph on illustration. It chronicles it and tells the story essentially about his... He is making a New Yorker cover, right? And he's made New Yorker covers in the past, and he is, all the while, explaining like his day-to-day, right? And explaining his quote-unquote process. What he goes on to explain is he explains his work ethic, because his work ethic is as much as much of the of his creativeness as his inspiration. Now, he says that his work day begins at 9 and ends at 6. And he goes to work at 9, and he starts work at 9, and then he ends work at 6. When 6 hits, he goes home. And this is a really rigid way of working. It's actually very, very popular in the arts industry to set this sort of like rigor for yourself. I was listening to a podcast by Mike Birbiglia, and he said it was the stupidest decision of his life, but he said he rented out a office in New York City so he could sit in there from 9 to 5 and write jokes. For those of you who don't know, Mike Birbiglia is a very popular storyteller and stand-up comedian, and he literally just went into his office in New York City, got up there, and just wrote jokes for 8 hours, and then went home. And he said that it helped to have a specific workplace and a specific studio designed for him to write jokes for 8 hours. Now, he says that art is a lot of just staring at a blank piece of paper. He also says art is a lot of the abstract. And he's right. I mean, the entire thing is called abstract. And if you want to... And he explains it so perfectly that I wish I could just play the audio clip. But he says there's a meter, right? There's a meter of absolute realism and then absolute abstract, right? And he uses the idea of a arrow in a heart in order to describe this. So an arrow in a heart, as abstract as it can get, is a red square with a black line piercing through it. That is as abstract as a arrow in a heart can get. But you get the idea if you're told that is a arrow in a heart. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's an arrow in a heart. But that's too abstract. And then there's exactly realistic, which is a real-life drawn anatomical heart with an arrow through it, and there's like a pool of blood on the floor around it. That is like as realistic as it can get. And somewhere between that pool of blood and the box with a line through it, there is the middle ground, which is perfect. And that is the cutesy heart drawing with a nice little arrow going through it with a little feather at the end. which we know as the symbol of like love or like toughness or whatever. It says mom on it, you know? So that was really interesting to me. And it got me to thinking, also relating it back to Hamilton. Hamilton abstracts. It does. I mean, it doesn't tell the whole story. It tells what is important, what is self-serving, what the message that Lin-Manuel wants to get across, which is that, like, immigrants created America. But it misses the story that those same immigrants that created America also participated in a genocide. It misses that entire mark. And not only are the immigrants like on the attack in America right now, but it's also the indigenous are on an attack in America. And a lot of people criticize Lin-Manuel for kind of heroicizing, making a hero out of Hamilton when Hamilton was in fact very racist and owned slaves when he lived in the Dominican. I can't remember where exactly he hailed from, but it's not like he was he's technically an immigrant, but his parents were from I think like dominantly Anglo-Saxon countries. So it's interesting in that way, but he abstracts that story in a way to completely drive home his message, and that's fantastic. And I think that's kind of the point of what that first one was to explain what design is and how important it is. So and how important design is into communicating your message, pretty much. So it goes on and it tells a story about the New Yorker and all of that. It tells a story about, or not the story about the New Yorker, but the story of his creations of the cover of his covers of the New Yorker magazine. His design ideas. He made this really cool pixel art of the very first New Yorker cover, and which really drove home the point of the abstract, his like pixel art and stuff like that. And then he also talked about his current design. So he was tasked with a design to create virtual reality, and he took a lot of inspiration from New York. And I would hope so, because he's drawing the cover of the New Yorker magazine. But he said the virtual reality is looking through a phone or a screen and experiencing life. He describes it as sort of like a threshold, like a crossing of a threshold, where you're in there one way and you're out you go in through one way and you want to experience and you want to see it from all angles, and that's what virtual reality is. So he created a cover that is the back of someone going into the subway, and then when you flip it over, it's the front of that same person coming into the subway, and like he describes the subway as the ultimate world between the inside and the out, which he thinks is virtual reality. And that's really cool. But past that, he takes design a step further. And if you put like a special app or something on, like, and put the cover of the magazine on video, it creates a virtual reality of the city, and buildings pop up off of the cover, and subway goes like all over and intertwines, and it's just so cool what he's pushing. Because he also describes that these ideas that he has, any idea that he makes under a deadline is not new. So like he had this idea for something, he theorized it, but even though this was the first time he put it out there, it isn't necessarily an idea that he had in the moment for this project. He was like, I can't wait till the New Yorker calls so I could do my cool virtual reality idea when they want to do a virtual reality story in their magazine. He is working from 9 to 6, probably 5 days a week, maybe 6 days a week or something, maybe 4, I don't know. And he is spending time, also some of that time he's spending in museums to get inspiration and stuff like that, and going to rivers or something to see water flow. I don't know what artists do to get inspiration, but he's still spending time to cultivate these ideas so he's ready to use them when the time comes. I mean, it shows him spending like minutes, like just putting like spilling coffee on his paper, and then or like water painting with coffee and stuff. It's super, super interesting, and it all stems from an idea. The next subject that was talked about was set design, and this is something that I was really interested in. I'm not necessarily an artist. I am a performer, which is technically an artist, but I wouldn't call myself an artist. I would call myself a clown. So I wanted to watch something that was more in tune with my clown instincts. So I watched the one on set design, and I've always been interested in like the other forms of design in theater, because I believe all aspects of theater have some sort of artistry to them, and everything that goes into a product as a whole, like architecture and all of that, is a chance for a designer to explore something that is creative at their heart. This did that, and this blew away my expectations completely. It's a woman named Ez, and she has designed concerts, she has designed plays, she has designed I'm trying to think of more concerts, plays, a bunch of stuff. Anything you could think of, really. One that really stuck out to me, and both episodes kind of tie into the same principles that I talked about already with the illustration one, so I'll be brief on this. But she talks about she talks about how you kind of need to create a familiar place and then shatter those expectations and give yourself wiggle room to play. You also do want to explore ideas, and you play around and you see what works, and you see what would be a fun idea. And then if you're given the opportunity to explore the thousands of ideas you've already come up with, you are in the right place. And it's just how many ideas you have. You want to shatter those boundaries. One thing is she designed Hamlet. She designed Hamlet in a very classical, just kind of, it was with Benedict Cumberbatch too. It was sick. I want to see that so bad. And he was Hamlet, and I want to see that. And she designed the set, which is just a typical sort of very, old-timey house. I can't remember exactly the era of home it was. I think she said like Edwardian or something, which might be a thing. I don't really remember. I don't remember that part of class. And then she like covered the floor of the house with just dirt, and nobody really acknowledged it, Like it's not like Hamlet came in and be like, we need to mop up in here. It was just, that's what the set was. And I think the play really like bodes well for that, because the play stands on uneven ground. The play opens with essentially someone's death, right? And it progresses with ghosts and more death and a mystery, essentially. So when you're seeing a bunch of actors stand on uneven ground in a very clear home, a home that is built for a king, because it's a king's home, it brings something out in you. And I think she does a really good job of making sure that feeling is intentional. But she also wants to make sure that the feeling is intentional, but it is not unique to it. It is unique to you. That's what I mean to say. That feeling is unique to you and unique to your own experience. She also designed this play. I can't remember what it was called, but she had a rook that was in there. And all she said was, I just needed to find things that were familiar, that resonate with people, and something that the director can latch onto and also resonate with. So they put a rook, like a chess piece, a huge rook, as the set. And whatever the rook means to someone is what it means to someone. And she also explains that the base of the rook is meant to be a tunnel. And whatever the feeling of being in a tunnel means to someone, that's what it means to them. So this was really interesting. There are 2 seasons of it on Netflix. I highly recommend, if you're interested in design or anything like that, to check it out. And there's stuff on like public design too, because it's not only just art, but it's also like architecture and footwear and stuff like that. So I highly recommend you check that out. When we come back, I will bring you the most unexpected documentary that I watched this week. And this documentary is I did not expect to actually make me emotional. It was absolutely fantastic, and we'll talk about that when we come up. And when we come back, I will share my thoughts on Politician Season 2. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the GSMC podcast. I am your host, Trey Pletnicki, as usual. And today we're going to talk about our third documentary of Hot Doc Tuesday. And that documentary is Speed Cubers, the Speed Cubers, if I want to be formal. This documentary follows two friends, Felix, who is from Australia, and Max, who hails from America. And they are speed cubers. For those of you who don't know, I was somewhat exposed to speed cubing when I was in high school. It's essentially you solve a Rubik's Cube as fast as you can. At its bare minimum, that is it. There are different challenges that you can give to yourself, and there are events for those challenges. For example, there is the 7x7 speed cube, there is the 6x6, the 5x5, the 4x4, the coveted 3x3, and then there are also one-handed events. So solve a 3x3 with one hand as fast as you can. There are events, I recall there being a 7... I saw somewhere there was an event where it's 7x7, where you do 7x7, 6x6, 5x5, 4x4, 3x3, and 2x2 as fast as you can. And I always thought that was pretty cool. It's like a marathon of cubing. This documentary was the most emotional one out of all of them. It's a 40-minute doc. It's not, there are no episodes. It's just the one, 40 minutes. And it tells the tale of two friends, Max and Felix, in the 2019 Speed Cube World Championships. Now, I didn't expect for this doc to be the one that tugs on my heartstrings. I expected, We Are Freestyle Love Supreme to tug on my heartstrings quite a bit. I expected the arts docs that I was watching to, especially because I'm so connected to them, I expected them to tug on my heartstrings, but I super did not expect the speed cubing, the one that isn't even my hobby, not even close to being my hobby, to end up making me a little emotional. Now, the story of the doc kind of goes like this. It's an origin story for Felix, who has been a world champion for years and years and years, and it tells a story of Max, who is kind of this up-and-comer sort of guy, but not really an up-and-comer anymore. He has been world champion 3 years running, but he beat out the long-standing Felix. And for the longest time, Max was not envious, but he idolized him. He looked up to him. He saw him as inspiration, as good competition, as one does. What was amazing is they became friends, and what they also tell the story of is they tell the story of Max's diagnosis of him being on the spectrum, of him having autism. And that story, I think, was the story of the documentary. It wasn't about speed cubing. It wasn't about how to get into speed cubing. It wasn't about the logistics of these tournaments. It was all of that was kind of a setting to tell Max's story of progression and him learning how to socialize and him learning how to make friends and his progress with with autism. His parents are very candid and honest, which I didn't really expect. You don't really see, especially in like a mass media format, something that's going to go on eventually Netflix. You don't really see parents talking with humility about their children's disabilities, really. And they did. They talked about it with humility, and not only with humility, but with I can't find the word for this. They talked about it with hope in their hearts. They talked about it with progress in mind. With we're going to try at this, and not a moment of giving up. Like not a moment of like just put the cube in his hands type thing. They really, really tried, and I thought that was really beautiful. Because I do feel like there is a moment of panic and a moment of struggle, especially when there's like early diagnosis of this type of stuff nowadays. But I think this is like important for that movement in particular. Now, Max is a genius. Felix is a genius. They both, well, I mean, people also, I saw this, I forget who this was. I think it was, Hikaru. I've been watching a lot of chess on Twitch.tv, and he was saying that a lot of people who play chess are considered like super high IQ, right? A lot of people who play chess are like, oh my god, they must be so smart if they can beat me at chess. And while that's true, I mean, it is a 15-year-old game, and to master a 15-year-old game, it is a 1,500-year-old game, and to master a 1,500-year-old game is not something to like shake a fin at. What is the saying? Wag your tail at? I don't know what that is. It's not something to be wary about. But it's something to be proud of. However, to be a genius, to be really, really good at something, is to be a genius at one thing. So people also associate with being able to solve a Rubik's Cube as, oh my god, you're a genius. But in reality, you're just getting really good at solving a puzzle. Now, puzzle solving and critical thinking is obviously has other like benefits outside of chess, outside of the cube. But like Hikaru mentioned, he said, listen, those pro Overwatch players, Overwatch is a game, like a team-based shooter, all those pro Overwatch players, you don't see people calling them geniuses, but essentially what they're doing, they're competing at a high level the same way that I compete at a high level in chess. It doesn't make me any more of a genius than those people do, and doesn't make them any more of geniuses than what I do. We're just masters at our field, and that's that. So I thought I'll take that segue and I'll put it in my pocket and I'll continue with the with the podcast. So speed cubing, it was a really amazing documentary. In the end, in the 2019 Worlds, I mean, Max from America takes home first after first after first after first after first. He takes home the one-handed event, the 4x4, the 5x5, the 6x6, and the 7x7. And in the end, Felix says this in a offhanded clip in the doc. He says, "You know what? It all doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the 3x3. Like the 3x3 is the cube. Like it's the puzzle. It's the one to take home. And in the end, it's Felix versus Max. But in reality, neither of them get it. I mean, Felix places 5th, I think, and Max places 4th. So it's a really touching moment because throughout the entire doc, you see Max wanting to look up to Felix, and you see Felix like pumping up Max despite maybe his own, like maybe he needs it more, but just to be a really, really good friend. Felix gives his energy to Max. And it's just it's so beautiful, because they also chronicle how Max takes losing. And they shot video of Max losing at like a qualifier or a local tournament or something like that. I can't remember what the setting exactly was, but they show Max losing and he takes it really hard. And he just lost the tournament. He lost the world championships in 3x3, and he takes it like a winner. He takes it like he was beat by someone better, and he takes it while also saying the words, this is going to make us stronger, right? Like, this is going to make us stronger. And I think that's really special. And it was, oh my God, it's such a good moment. And especially, I go to a lot of competitive Smash tournaments. This isn't going to equate at all. Like, this isn't about me, okay? But I will share some sort of experience. I go to a lot of competitive Smash tournaments, and the way losing feels is horrible. It feels terrible to lose. And it gets to a point where you're making excuses for yourself, and whether it be inside of your head, and you could be making positive excuses, like, dang, he outplayed me, but I shouldn't beat myself up about it. Dang, I should have yada, yada, yada. There are 10,000 other things I could have done, but I shouldn't get too in my head about it. I just need to go back and get better. No. What Max did in that documentary is he accepted his loss, understood he needed to get better, but didn't make an excuse. Like, those losses make you stronger, but you're not going to make an excuse for why you lost, period. You lost. You tried your best, and you lost. Sometimes that's what happens. Like, if you try your best and lose, that is like the best case scenario. That is the best reason to want to get better, to make your best better. A lot of competitive players also talk about anything, like competitive anything, like baseball, basketball, or anything, which is raising your floor. So there's a concept where your skill is a ceiling and a floor. And between that is where you perform, right? So some players have an incredibly high ceiling and a low floor, and that makes them inconsistent. But if you raise your floor while keeping your ceiling in the same spot, you get more consistent, and you get more consistent results, and you'll also have a better understanding of how you can move forward. So raising your floor and practicing consistency, which is a part of discipline, and keeping your ceiling at the same level is perfect. Obviously, you want to raise your ceiling, you want to raise your best effort, but you also want to, like, raising your floor and making yourself perform more comfortably is something that you absolutely need to do. It's also, people have a lot of problems with low floors when they have trouble performing under pressure. Pressure, like, historically makes people lower their floors. Like, it's like basement, you know? And so in conclusion, I won't ramble on for any longer about my competitive Smash Bros. Habits. In conclusion, the documentaries I saw today were fantastic. I would rate Freestyle Love Supreme, We Are Freestyle Love Supreme, I would rate that like a 7 out of 10. I think it's it's fantastic. The hindsight that they had to film them in like the early 2000s and then come out with this documentary in 2020, like after Hamilton and all of that, is perfect. I love that. I would say the abstract documentary, I think handles the themes of design super well, and I've only seen 2 episodes, but I give those episodes like 8 out of 10. That's pretty good. Next up, I would probably give the Speed Cubers. I don't know. It really tugged at my heartstrings. It's really good. It's 40 minutes long. It's artfully done in a way. It's just really a simple story. I'd probably give it like a 9 out of 10. Just go watch it. It takes none of your time. It's fun. It's like, it teaches you something about yourself. Maybe, I don't know. Just go watch it. So that's it for Hot Doc Tuesday. Join us next week for another Hot Doc Tuesday. I have no idea what documentaries I'm going to watch this week, but I promise you I will watch some. Stick around. We got one more segment left. I saw season 2 of The Politician, and I talked about season 1 last week, and I want to talk about season 2, and I also want to talk about Ryan Murphy. So stick around, and we will be right back.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the GSMC podcast. I am your host, Trey Pletnicki, and we have reached the final segment of the show, the one where I talk about the politician again. I always do this. I always watch a Ryan Murphy show, and I just explode. I explode with anger. I explode with happiness that it's over. I don't know why I expect the the result to change. It's ridiculous. So, okay, I don't know where to begin. Okay, so if you didn't listen last week, The Politician is a show starring Ben Platt, Laura Dreyfus, others. Jessica Lange's in the first season. What's her face? Gwyneth Paltrow's in it. Who else is in it? Bette Midler's in the second season. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous show. It's a show that has a premise that is completely outlandish. Well, it's not so outlandish in the first season. The premise itself, it gets the premise of the second season is outlandish, and I think that is the root of its issue. So let's talk about it as a whole, because this is what we have so far to go off of with The Politician. So the premise of The Politician is it follows a kid named Peyton, and he wants to be the president of the United States, and he will do whatever it takes to be the president of the United States, and he is following a specific set of guidelines in order to be the president of the United States. So going off of like averages, going off of school attendance, going off of even like winning elections early on, going off of like extracurriculars and musicianship and stuff like that. He's like, I'm going to be president, so I'm going to do everything that is going to make me president of the United States. That is like season one. And season one starts with the premise, I need to win this high school election or I'm not going to be the president of the United States in the future because people will use the fact that I haven't won a high school election against me. Okay? So he wins the election, kind of, and that is pretty much all you need to know about season one. He wins the election, but he doesn't actually win the election. He loses by a few votes, but his opponent concedes because she thinks she's going to lose in a landslide. Which ruins Peyton's dreams because he needs to win. He doesn't need like an unopposed concession, you know? What happens in between is kind of weird. There's murder, there's suicide, there's sex in high school, which, once again, like I talked about before, don't know where that was when I was in high school. So, and then there's like... And then there's like a bunch of other mumbo-jumbo nonsense of stuff that doesn't really happen in high school, which is also like a lot of rich people problems, which I just don't have time for. So that's season one. Season one ends with him finishing out the year. He's not listened to on the school board, and he goes to NYU because he got into Harvard, but only because he had money, and then he lost all the money, so he couldn't go to Harvard, so he went to NYU. So, yeah. And season one ends with Ben Platt, Peyton, in NYU, and he finds out through his previous campaign manager in high school that the person who is running for state senate in his district is running completely unopposed and essentially has no strategy to win because they've been running unopposed for decades, right? That's the end of season 1. That's pretty good. It's a good season of TV. You know, season 1 made me want to watch season 2, so I'll give it to that, right? Because you don't watch a lot of stuff, and especially 8 hours of content. You don't watch 8 hours of content and then subject yourself to 8 hours of more content if you didn't like it in the first place. I think that is Ryan Murphy's strength, right? He starts really strong and gets you hooked, so you explore your knowledge of the sunk cost fallacy. Oh, man. So season 2, so the premise of season 1, like I said, is this guy, he needs to be class president because if he isn't class president, he won't be actual president. Season 2's premise is I technically lost class president. I need to win this election in state senate with like a shoestring budget, but is it? Because you have a lot of stuff going on in your office. And if you win this state senate seat at 22 years old, you will become the next president. So, yeah, my thing is like, these are college graduates. Once again, they probably come from tons of money, all of them. I can only assume because they have unlimited of it. And so I just don't, it's just unbelievable, you know? And I think that's part of the charm of it, you know, that it's completely fiction. Like it's unopposed fiction, right? You look at everything with complete, like, face value, to take everything at face value. It is without a doubt in your mind a fiction, made up fairy tale story. But then it does stuff where it's like, is it? Like, is this a fiction story, or are you trying to make like a documentary? Because at some points in season 2, and this is not as prevalent in season 1, though I feel like if I were to go back into season 1, I would be like, oh, Ryan Murphy did the same thing in season 1, I just didn't really notice it or didn't care. But it's so present in season 2 that I feel like I have to talk about it. Liberal Hollywood has this habit, right, of cramming political themes down its viewers' throats. Now, this is a sign of bad art. Art that comments on something and that something does not service the story it's telling is bad, right? If you are going to comment on something with art, you make something that is clearly defined as political art. Okay? We are supposed to like Peyton, right? He is the hero of our story. He's a clown. He's an absolute clown. People hate him. His friends hate him. Anybody who's ever met him will hate him at some point. Hell, his mom kind of hated him for a second in season 2 and a little bit hated him in season 1 for just a little bit. And he is seen as the hero, and he's also seen hailing like Green Party ideals in the show. So not only is Peyton, this creates like a very what's the word? You're confused. You're very confused. You want to hate this guy because he's a bad guy. He's a horrible person. But then he's handling these politics that are like next gen progressive. So it's like you can shovel all of this left wing propaganda down my throat as much as you want. Feel free. I love it. But the person that is shoveling that left wing propaganda down my throat is also a human psychopath, like huge psychopath. So it's just confusing. Like that isn't telling the story that you want to tell. This guy's a complete sleazeball, and he's telling the story of someone he's portraying this image, this public image of like forward thinking, you know? And maybe that's a statement about how politics is dirty and you need to be dirty in order to get anything done. But it feels weird that the stuff he's slinging doesn't match the personality that he's bringing to the table. He's power hungry, he's greedy, and even on top of that, he's rich. It's just so confusing. It's like whiplash. It's viewership whiplash, right? Past that, I needed that 3-second moment of silence in order for me to just like catch my breath and catch my thoughts. I think past that, once again, there's an issue with like season 1 toys with realism, right? It toes the line between realism and unadulterated fiction. And it does it well to the point where you know it's fiction because no high school would ever do this. But then in season 2, it toes the line between reality and fiction and then just goes full fiction and then goes full reality. And it gets to that point where it's like, yo, tell me what you want me to think. Once again, whiplash, complete whiplash. I'm pulled in 2 directions. You need to pick one and let me just think one way for a second. I'm getting heated. I'm getting heated. I will say, Bette Midler is the best one in season 2. Bette Midler plays the campaign manager of Ben Platt's opposing opposition, essentially. This, I forget what the woman's name is. Dee? Yeah, Dee Standish, I think is her name. Bette Midler plays her campaign manager, and she's fantastic. She's super funny. All of these people are like Broadway people. I mean, Dee Standish, the opposing party to Peyton, is a 3-time Tony Award winner. Ben Platt is a Tony Award winner. Laura Dreyfus is a Tony nominee. She was also in Dear Evan Hansen with Ben Platt, so there's a reason why she's in this. And Bette Midler obviously won a Tony for, what's it called? Hello, Dolly. That one. So these people are not, they're not unfamiliar with the theatric. What my issue is when it toes the line between reality and fiction, you don't expect it to go full fiction. A no joke plot point in this show is is the election is a dead tie, like 45,000 votes to an additional 45,000, right? Dead tie, and they are going to settle the election with a match of rock, paper, scissors. A rock, paper, scissors match that doesn't end up happening in the first place because Dee Standish concedes. So this is the type of like ridiculousness and realism that I'm seeing Ryan Murphy toy with in Politician season 2. And now if we're going to go to hyper-realism, in each season there is a episode called The Voter, because the entire show centers around politicians and they want to see what the voter is going to look like. In season 1, the voter episode is like sick. It follows a high school kid who is completely just completely indifferent about the whole thing, punches Ben Platt's campaign manager, Peyton's campaign manager, and it's funny, it's poignant, it is great. It comments exactly the amount I wanted to comment. I wanted it to comment, and in the end, the voter doesn't vote. In season 2, it is, oh my god. It toys with realism to a point where I'm like, and it doesn't even focus completely on the voter. It still wants to progress storylines and stuff like that. But at the same time, it doesn't, because we're focusing on the voter. But for some reason, the voter is going like all over the place in this town. It's all just, once again, whiplash. Complete whiplash. So that's my thoughts on season 2. Overall, it was good. This is like when video game reviewers are like, I hated it. The colors were too vibrant. The game is sticky. It feels like I'm walking with cinder blocks on my feet when I'm just trying to move anywhere. 7 out of 10. It's good TV. It's brain candy. It's junk. Yeah. I just have such an issue with Ryan Murphy. He does this in every single season of his shows, man. They start off so strong, and then they tank. They hard fall. Anyway, that's our show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning into the GSMC television podcast. I'm your host, Trey Plotnicki. If you don't mind, go ahead and give us a subscribe wherever you're listening. It really helps us out. And if you like the show, leave us a review, whether it be 5 stars, 4 stars, hopefully nothing less than that. Please leave a review. It helps us out a whole lot. You can follow us anywhere on social media. Just search GSMC to find all of our podcasts. And if you feel so inclined, listen to the episodes I don't narrate. There are a couple great guys that are doing the television podcast. And also listen to the other podcasts on the network that are not about television. There's a health and fitness podcast. There's a movie podcast that I highly recommend you listen to. So go ahead and check those guys out. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. And have a great I can't end this correctly, can I? Have a great evening, you guys. Spare me a voice crack, will ya?
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts podcast network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts podcast network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.